Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Josh Moon, who is the proprietor and operator of Kiwifarms.net. Kiwifarms.net is a throwback to a particular point in internet history that prized free speech and was quite a bit more Wild West than the tamed and homogenized internet that we live in right now, or live with right now, depending on how involved you are in that internet thing. In this conversation, we talk about the history of Kiwi Farms, what role it serves in internet culture, which is not a null role, and Josh's value set with regards to free speech, and his life on the lam as he has become a target of major powerful brokers in the internet world. Josh is a great guy. There are links to his work and Kiwi Farms down in the description. If you don't know about Kiwi Farms, if you've never visited Kiwi Farms, it's quite the wild place. I suggest you look it up. And without further ado, here is Josh Moon.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Pretty good, all things considered.
All things considered, huh?
Yeah, have you followed what's happening? Because if you have not, you have actually, the delays to getting to talk to you are serendipitous because you're in a very interesting time right now.
I am. We are.
Yeah.
We're in this together.
Well, now you are. I'm recruiting you.
Okay. Wow. Nullsec Army or something like that.
That's the total retard war. You're drafted.
You know what? I was seeing something about that. I was trying to refresh myself on Kiwi Farms, and there was some lag going on a lot last night with it.
On the site?
Yeah, page could not be loaded, reload.
Yeah, well, okay. So, I mean, that's the issue if you want to get right into it.
Yeah. Oh, so you're under attack right now, again.
Actually, the DDoS attack has lifted because I don't want to say anything about how I managed to do this, but I have found a way to deal with the DDoS attack very effectively. However, in response to fixing this, they did lift the DDoS attack. Cogent has null routed any connections to the Kiwi Farms. So actually, I'm very curious. Are you on Virgin Media, by any chance?
No.
No. So if you just go to kiwifarms.net, do you get redirected to .hk and it loads?
Okay, let me check
or
this
it does
out.
not load? I'm kind of curious. I don't know.
I'm on
how many
Comcast, and it redirects me to kiwifarms.hk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that does not load?
It's loading now. Last night it was being.
Oh, okay, yeah. The issue with last night was that Aranet, which is a Hong Kong registrar, had put a client hold on our .tw, but I managed to find a Hong Konger to translate some stuff for me, and they actually lifted that hold, so now we're back in action on .tw. But I switched us over to .hk anyways.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up and down.
Yeah, it's always something going on.
Yeah, always. There was a brief period where we enjoyed a lot of stability, but that ended. I mean, I suppose it depends on what you want to talk about, because I can give you. Whenever I talk to people, I always try to go chronologically from the initial event to where we're at. I'm not sure if you want to what you want to talk about in general, or if you want to go through everything, or just the drop Kiwi Farms, or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want the audience to. I think you're part of internet history, so I just want to chronicle that. So, but for my audience's sake, it'd be nice to know a little bit about your background and what this Kiwi Farms thing is, because I'm sure most people don't really know about it. But
very beginning. Yeah. So I'm sort of a social misfit. I was raised in Florida. I was very heavily involved in online stuff like early 4chan and other forums. And the forums that I was participatory in were influenced heavily by Something Awful. I was never a goon, but the owner of the forum, which I was active in, was a goon. So he built the rule set and his moderation style very similar to Something Awful. I did not know that until I was older, but that's what it was.
Could you help the audience understand what a goon is? And Something Awful was a early web forum.
Something Awful is a traditional web forum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was unless you were around for the early internet, it's very hard to explain this succinctly.
Yeah.
But it was just sort of like a early blog where a couple back in the day, the biggest websites on the internet were these tech savvy young guys fresh out of MIT and other tech schools, and they just put up blogs on the internet because they knew how, and they said, this is what we feel about this dumb shit that we're talking about, and it was a huge success, and there were lots of early internet blogs similar to that, and Something Awful is mostly known now for its forum. So Low-Tax, rest in peace, peace be upon him, uh, built a forum to complement his blog and his writings. But the forum ended up becoming more successful than the blog over time. And it had a very laissez-faire attitude to moderation, very hands-off approach for a very long time. It had every board had its own culture, and they were all into video games and stuff. So
Yeah.
the video game forums that I was active in were similar traditional web forums built by goons who had a similar mentality to Low-Tax.
Okay. Anything goes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, they had these things called like a hell thread, and a hell thread was basically just you could post docs, personal information about users on the forum, and that was a breeding ground for a lot of people who are very influential to this day. They try to cover up their history on Something Awful, but I know it.
Oh, really? Okay. And so when you got on the scene, what was the culture? What was the what was it about this that was interesting to you?
So if you're referring to the forum directly, the forum as it exists today is kind of a contemporaneous form of the forum. Originally, what it was is that through my other experiences to internet culture, I learned of something called the Quickie, which was a Wikipedia-style website dedicated entirely to one person named Christian Weston Chandler. Chris is still around. I think most people who know him will know him because he was arrested 2 years ago for having sex with his mother.
Yeah.
Potentially against her will. So that's a really crazy story. Impossible to touch on it. There's literally hundreds of hours of documentaries about Chris on the thing. So there was a wiki dedicated to him, and there was a lot of discussion about Chris, and they took it to the talk pages of this wiki. The administrators of this wiki did not appreciate that, so they created a forum for the Quickie called the Kiwifarms. This was hosted for a couple of years by different people. And then they started having hosting problems because when people got angry for whatever, they got banned, they would start harassing providers and they would get kicked off. And I had the genius idea. I told them, I will make sure this website does not go offline because they were using free providers. I'll rent a VPS. I'll install the forum software myself. I'll self-manage everything. And we won't have any more issues with hosting ever again.
Okay.
So I took over the site basically in 2013.
Why would you do that?
So because I had been active in forums for a while, yeah. I had just started my career in web development, and I was interested in running a real project. Yeah. I liked forums, and I said, running a forum, a small web forum of a couple dozen people talking about Christianity seemed like a lot of fun.
Okay. And it was really just a couple dozen people.
It was a very small number of people, yeah, like less than 100 active users.
So Chris Chan is kind of the archetypal LOLCow. Is that?
Yes, he is the origin of the term.
Yeah.
So a LOLCow, as the name implies, is somebody who can be milked for laughs.
Yeah.
So Chris is the best example of that because he had autism. He was very gullible as a person, and more importantly, I think he was willing to believe anything that anyone told him that he liked. So if it was flattering to him, he would be very willing to believe what people told him. So he was very easily duped into sagas, they called them, or plots that had like a narrative structure to them. We're going to do this, and then we're going to get Chris involved this way. We're going to have Chris do X, Y, Z. It'll be funny, and then it'll blow up in his face. And that's what they did over and over again.
Okay.
So that was the archetype of a LOLCow.
So, and there's different levels to this. So there's Chris himself, and then, and his issues and what's going on. And then there's the people who are manipulating him. And then there are the people who are documenting this. And then there are the people who are kind of just the audience. Right?
Yeah, that's about right.
And so
there's Chris himself, the trolls.
Yeah.
the quickie people, the people who actually actively, archive stuff, and then you have the lurkers who just read.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but that's kind of like that's kind of an internet subculture then, to focus on a real life person and to document their exploits, or to be, to be trolling an individual.
For sure. It's kind of, I've noticed now that people will refer to this kind of thing as cringe culture. So I think that many people would recognize that as a concept, as a familiar concept. It is very related. Cringe culture is more passing, like someone posted a video and that got circulated around and people cringed at that. Whereas you have the true connoisseurs who go down to the source, and that's the LOLCow stuff, is when there's one person who you do actively follow. And, a lot of people are former fans. Like, you have huge entertainers who have millions of subscribers that, people talk about for thousands of pages, who used to be former fans, but then they got scorned for whatever reason. They said, I didn't like it when I started doing this. And now they kind of feel like they're in decline and just are along for the ride.
Okay. And so on a couple of years ago, this Twitter account, Libs of TikTok, started taking off and took the cringe culture concept and then applied a political frame to it. So it's become a part of our politics, like a really big part of politics. It's part of Twitter to host and to share these really cringe videos of the other side. I guess that's always been, I remember in the Obama era, people would.
Sorry, give me 1 second. I have to take a call or look at something. Yep. I apologize. Sorry. Yeah, that really took me off guard. But no, I remember what you're saying. You're talking about Chaya and Libs of TikTok. Yeah. I would actually say that's a really fair assessment. Because the cringe culture stuff is a source of entertainment, and entertainment is one of the most powerful things in the world. There's a group of people who are addicted to the drama and the stresses of politics. But I would say that everyone loves to be entertained. And if you can make your political movement the fun one, the funny one, it's very attractive to people. You'll gain momentum, you'll gain supporters, you'll benefit financially, and ultimately you will achieve your political goals if the people on your side are gallivanting and having a good time while they do what you want them to.
Yeah. So it's just novel because this dark, murky kind of internet subculture is now mainstreamed. It's just become a part of the internet for one reason or another. And there is a political aspect to it. And by political, I mean there's a way of gaining power and maintaining your power through the use of this
in a way
producing content.
To be clear, I do not try and use my website to achieve any real world political gains. I just don't care. Many people do. And that's why both the left and the right accuse us of being what they have referred to as info laundering, which I think is a fascinating concept that I don't actively endorse, but I've seen both the right and the left say this, that basically people will find information about somebody, and then instead of using that information directly themselves to instigate a conflict, they will post on the Kiwifarms. It'll spread out organically, and then they have to deal with like a grassroots controversy over something that somebody found. So they do, I'm sure they do that, but I consider that fair game. If something is true and something is embarrassing and compromises somebody's values, I see no reason why someone shouldn't be able to share that on the internet.
Yeah. But there's something about Kiwifarms, I guess. So how did it start to take off then? Because it becomes politically salient. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene went after you guys, and there's the whole Keffel situation. So, I mean, you guys are embattled. You become this political hot potato. Kind of thing,
to be clear,
eventually.
Against both the left and the right, people on both sides hate us.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. People think of like Switzerland as a very neutral country, but when you're neutral, it also means that you don't have allies. So I can't ever call upon the forces of some, external community, because necessarily in order to do that, I would have to benefit them in some way. And I just don't censor the website. I have no inclination to. If I like somebody, I as a user might comment, like, I think that, people are taking something too seriously, but my opinion on something is not necessarily what everyone will agree with. Oftentimes people really hate my opinions on stuff.
I saw them going after you on something or another while I was browsing.
It was the cheese. Oh my God. Americans can't take that they have bad cheese. So actually angered people. I made a joke about how Americans just have Velveeta and cheddar cheese, and people got really genuinely upset with me about that. But that's a great example of how my community is like a herd of cats. They're there.
Yeah.
They participate, but they're not minions. They're not like my army.
So if, to get it straight, it began with Chris Chan. And just kind of protecting that, I guess, that thread or that reservoir.
Just that little community.
Information. Okay.
But then, of course, people
for some reason, people didn't want to host that. And why? Because it was, mean, trollish, doxy? What was the
It was just that people were a burden. For instance, the last people who got they were hosting, okay, there's several factors, but one of them was that it was a free forum. So they're not paying any money for their hosting to begin with. So if someone starts complaining and harassing the free host, they're not inclined to do anything for you. Okay. And then the second thing is that if they do kick you off, they take all the content with them. So all those threads you made, all those posts, all the archives so important to documenting Chris are gone. And that was unacceptable. So even when we get deplatformed, the site has been contiguous since I've started hosting it. I've never lost, if I've lost data, it's been a couple days at a time. I have backups everywhere. So that's a huge benefit to self-hosting. But the real issue is that, Chris attracts crazy people. The whole thing attracts fucking nut jobs.
Yeah.
So they start harassing the host takes it down. And it doesn't have to be for like any really heinous reason. They can just make up shit. They can, say this is cyberbullying, and that's usually good enough for a lot of small companies. They just don't want, companies cannot be asked to deal with things that a government might have to tolerate by law. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it took off because we added more people to it.
What do you mean you added more people?
We added the big breaking point was a group called Deagle Nation, and they actually turned out to be fake. They were like a sketch group associated with MDE, who is Sam Hyde's group. So for all the fish tank people out there, MDE's one of MDE's associates was an admin for a while because he was involved in Deagle Nation. But this attracted a lot of people to talk about the stuff, and in particular because at some point 4chan decided that Chris Chan stuff and any e-celeb stuff was not allowed.
Oh. Okay.
So, if you try to make a thread about Chris right now in B, which is where Chris really took off, they will actually delete that. If you try to talk about any number of individuals that are like considered low tier, I think the mods will just delete that. So one of the big things that actually contributed to the forum taking off was that for many years we were actually the only website that you could talk about, and still are for a large number of things. We were the only place that you could talk. So it's not like I'm a mastermind, or it's not like my traditional web forum is some breaking of convention that attracts a blue ocean of users. It's that you have no choice. I have a monopoly on certain kinds of gossip, and if you want to talk about some people, you will talk about it on the Kiwifarms, or you won't talk about it anywhere.
Yeah. And so it just kind of snowballs from Chris Chan to all these other. You started dropping a bunch of like very obscure names like Fish Tank, and Sam Hyde is not that obscure.
Well, that's a contemporary thing. Sam Hyde, everyone knows, but it was Deagle Nation was. Deagle Nation was like a thing that came and went, but it was very funny when it happened. And they're just little people who ran DeviantArt accounts that were funny because it was like weird shit, and people wanted to talk about them. The talking about larger and larger people was a thing over time because it's like who gets to decide who is worth talking about or not. And I'll be right back 1 second.
Okay. So one thing that you, what one person, I guess, realizes when going to Kiwifarms, and I guess I discovered it back when Jonathan Yaniv or Jessica Yaniv was in ascendancy of being like just a completely just cringe individual.
That's such a fucked up story. Can I rant about that?
Yeah.
Jonathan Yaniv, who now everybody knows as the crazy weirdo who sued 8 women, sued, quote unquote, complained to the Human Rights Tribunal in British Columbia about for not waxing his balls. Everyone knows that story. That story was buried hard for months. He is friends with the co-founder of Twitter, and anybody talking about him on Twitter was banned immediately. There was no discussion about him allowed. He was able to get. Okay, so here's an example. My family endures a lot of shit because of me. Sorry, I don't talk to them. But people would use WordPress.com to host blogs, calling everybody in my family the worst shit you can imagine. And WordPress will never take that down. WordPress actually has a really strong pro free speech stance beyond a lot of websites. But people that were established feminists who had a body of work that indicates that they're a real person who is actually not trying to harass anyone, is just doing their job, were writing about Yaniv, and WordPress banned them. They banned, you had these very sturdy websites censoring people talking about Yaniv because he had tech connections. And it was not until, I can't remember their name, but they're like a journalist thing. Eventually it broke out. And one of the other things is I did a stream on Yaniv. He managed, I put up a stream buffer on YouTube, and I said, Jessica, I didn't dead name or anything. I just said Jessica Yaniv, and I got people ready to do a little stream, hoping to do like a little live stream expose thing. And it was taken down, and I got a strike for harassment before it even started. Yeah. So just the threat, he somehow had people in YouTube to take down live streams before they started. It was crazy. And this guy, people talked about how gross he was and stuff. Everyone has forgotten how tightly Silicon Valley wrapped around this guy before it broke into the mainstream and everyone distanced themselves from it. He had his thumb on the pulse and was able to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until his various lawsuits came about that broke through that people were able to actually start talking about him.
Yeah,
and he became too much of a liability. But that stuff that still makes my blood boil. He did so much damage before he went. He kept getting coddled and enabled to do shit, and he fucked with 8 different people and threatened their livelihoods. So they all went out of business, I'm pretty sure, and constantly enabled by Silicon Valley to do what he did.
Yeah, he's a really interesting character. Before he went trans, I was doing research on him, and he had this Google account where he would review subways all throughout like Canada and write all these write-ups about Subway for some reason. It was really weird. And then he had like some weird kind of Vogel vibes too around young girls and stuff like that. So it was just really
yeah. He was like involving himself in trying to get access to like these women's like little girls tour groups for like the Girl Scouts in Canada and stuff. It was creepy. He also had a blog for reviewing sex toys too. That was his other thing.
Yeah, which is okay. Yeah, very interesting guy.
Totally
is
mental.
He
and
prison?
Yeah,
no. He just kind of got ran out.
So after he lost the favor of the media. And all these journalists started using the Kiwifarms to harvest like this information stuff that we had was being 1-to-1 copied. Nobody ever credits us. That's fine. I'm used to it by now.
Okay.
But it's like, they started using it because this guy's a threat. I'm just happy to see him finally get dealt with. But yeah, the journalists keep coming to his house and he starts swinging at them and stuff. So he's copped like several assault charges and battery, and his insane mother is like a first generation Israeli immigrant and is like threatened people off of a motor scooter and stuff. It's nuts. Like the whole story is white trash.
Yeah.
Like television, like Jerry Springer.
Yeah. And so Kiwifarms, that's how I found you guys, because I think you did a stream and we were just working on the same story, I think. And I go to this forum and there's this language that's being used here, and you get this feeling that you're kind of not in verboten territory, but you're able to say things and to broach topics that you're not allowed to talk about anywhere else. And it's really interesting because it can be kind of, on the surface, kind of rude and crass and mean. And you wouldn't think that, these really polite, and it turns out that a lot of these really polite women, these gender critical women, the TERFs so-called, were using Kiwifarms because that was the only place where they could share information too. So you have all these different people that's way beyond just this forum about Chris Chan. It's like the only place where concerned citizens can actually talk about threats and discuss things that are important and that aren't allowed to be talked about on Twitter for one reason or another.
The weirdest thing that we've managed to get is a pretty large TERF following, and that is because the transgender stuff was so shut down everywhere. Mums in the UK were getting their Facebook accounts banned because they would show a picture of a man in a dress being sexually perverse and saying, "I'm not comfortable with this. This makes me feel endangered," and they would get banned for it.
Yeah.
So the transgender stuff has radicalized, thousands of people into being much more tolerant of certain kinds of speech than they ever would have been normally if they had not been subjected to top-down bureaucratic, technocratic censorship themselves.
What's your perspective on that, and how, as the internet has developed from the Wild West to just this corporate kind of
a gated garden. It's a walled garden. It's disgusting. I hate it. I have absolute and total contempt for everybody in Silicon Valley and California. I think that we have taken a golden era of mankind that basically ended the Cold War, when people from Russia and the United States could start sending messages to each other online. You can't hold guns at each other's heads and do that at the same time. Huh. And there was the 90s, and you had, for the most part, in developing in Western countries, you had all this development and peace and prosperity. And in the 2000s, they realized how incredibly threatening I think it was very specifically, there's something called Project Chainology, where people organized to protest the banks and the 1% and all that stuff. All that the 1% meme came about from Chainology, and you just had these people amassing in the streets to try and wrest back some of the wealth that had accumulated at the very top of the country. And I correctly identified how the financial system of this country is organized in such a way that it's completely privately controlled to the detriment of the American people, in a way that allows financial censorship and restraint to compel and censor in a way that the government cannot. It's a really scary apparatus that has been built, and people started to protest that. And I think the CIA, which is my schizo theory, I think the CIA figured out how to fizzle out decentralized headless movements like the Project Chainology, because anybody who was involved in Project Chainology will tell you that the protests started to die because you would have these agitators in the crowd who would bring up, wait a second, we can't just talk about taking from the ultra mega rich who have billions of dollars of assets while we can't pay our bills. We also have to talk about equity and inclusiveness and reparations for minority groups. And when you are in a part of a movement that's fragmented like that, it just dies. So I think at a certain point, the government realized the value of, one, controlling the internet, because people were grassroots organizing very scary things like ending the Fed. And then two, they realized that decentralized organizations could be effectively split through gender and racial issues. And with the transgender stuff, it's wholesale fabricated. Prior to 2014, this barely existed. It was like a underground drag things for gay men to enjoy in private, and sometimes do little parades, and that's fine, whatever. But now it's like a whole new thing to divide people over. So now, you see all this media, and I'm thankful that people are talking about the censorship and stuff, but it is kind of remarkable how detached the transgender stuff is from anything that still is a pressing issue that existed in 2008. Yeah. So effectively, any kind of political change that you would have wanted to enact in 2008 still exists, but is now completely dwarfed by the schisms and ideology about gender and stuff.
And race, yeah. And it goes back and forth between race and then goes to gender.
Yeah,
Probably go
and
back to
nothing gets
race.
done.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So why do you think that the transgender phenomena, from your point of view, was so disruptive to the point where people who claim a transgender ideology have a outsized amount of power, and some of your biggest enemies, or one of your biggest enemies, where a lot of like the news coverage from last year comes from, is kind of like you in this pitched battle with this.
I think that transgenderism is more likely to affect people who have two qualities, two traits. Number one, I think that the autistic are severely more inclined to be transgender, because I think that as autism impacts, mostly your social awareness, you don't really understand gender roles or anything, and you might feel better doing one thing and have absolutely no regard for why it's done the other way. So, and as long as it feels better to you, then if you're autistic, you probably just preferred that. Now, the other thing is, I think that and this is something that I've developed as an opinion more over time. I was very hesitant towards it early on, but I really am starting to think that pornography is so pervasive, and especially to some people, it is like a genuine physiological addiction to being in a state of arousal, and they just look at porn hours a day, and they lose days of their lives to this, to masturbating endlessly. And that sounds like a joke, sounds like a skit, but there are people who are like that. And when you do that, you have to find new sources of arousal, and I think one of them is, as porn becomes more misogynistic, and people are attracted to rape and other kinds of fantasies to first satiate that interest in porn that they're going down. What happens then is that they start to see women as a subhuman class, and then that becomes internalized. They say, wow, women really are trash, and I enjoy seeing them humiliated, but I've already seen that for hundreds of hours now, so now maybe I can only live that vicariously. If I become the woman, then I can become as a bimbo, I can become an object, and that is arousal. And if that sounds insane, they have written articles saying this exact thing. I didn't discover my trans identity until, there's one that goes literally like this: I did not discover that my trans identity without the help of porn. And then I realized that to be a woman is to be fucked. Like, that's a word for word quote. So I'm really convinced that it's autistic people, and especially autistic people who have inundated themselves with pornography that has turned them into a humiliation fetishist, and they see being a woman as the most humiliating possible thing imaginable.
Well, I don't know about the humiliation part with the Wachowski brothers. One of them transitioned and said directly that it was watching transgender porn, that something about self-expression and authenticity. And
that's the cover up. I'm sure that I'm right. That's how do you go out in public and say, yeah, I just see women as holes, and I think that being a hole is really embarrassing. That turns me on. But no, obviously you're going to say, well, I think that it's a matter of expressing their true self, isn't it?
Yeah. And so why do you think that why do you think that the transgender phenomena has so much power in the elite sphere or in Silicon Valley? Why do you think that is one vector of control?
Is autistic? The tech bros. Who control the internet? The tech bros. So you have an entire generation of incredibly important tech workers who are in the upper stratas of Silicon Valley, who are at with the technology the way that it is that fewer and fewer people, especially with machine learning coming in, fewer and fewer people control more and more of what people see. You need fewer bodies controlling millions and millions of connections on the internet. And especially with all, like, if you look up how many websites existed in the 2000s, in the 2010s, the mid 2010s, and now it went from thousands of websites occupying half of all internet attention down to like 12, owned by 4 different companies. So if you are a high up trust and safety advisor at Facebook, you personally control millions and millions and millions and millions of people indirectly. And if you say, I'm trans, or I'm friends with trans people, and we really have to stop this stuff, and also it looks great for our our diversity and equity and inclusion score that BlackRock is giving us money for because we're publicly traded as face, that becomes very persuasive.
Yeah.
So it is. I think it is the autism thing. People who are autistic think abstractly, and they thrive in environments where they can sit down and interface with something like a computer. They end up naturally occupying these spots, and then when they are not working, what are they doing? Well, they're gooning 8 hours a day to weird rape porn, and then they become transgender, and then suddenly everyone has to play along with their fantasy. And if you don't, well, I am the top trust and safety advisor at Facebook, and go fuck yourself. You're banned.
Mm-hmm. So, I've been studying the influence of the internet on this generation, I guess Gen Z or whatever, just the hyper online set. And it's, you could say, the internet's a net negative. You could point to all these negative effects, but reality is it's millions and millions of people who grew up in the internet and on the internet, and you're one of them. How do you think it's affected you, and what are the benefits and the detriments that it has had in general for you? And do you think about that?
It would be impossible for me to describe what I would be like if I had a lesser, because I was online at 9. I was playing Neopets and RuneScape at 9 years old.
Yeah.
I started posting on 4chan, when I was a freshman in high school. So
yeah,
it would be literally impossible for me to describe. And that's where all my friends were when I was a teenager. That's where my first, girlfriends were when I was a teenager. It's like, it would be literally, I would be a completely different person without the internet. It would be indescribable. As far as the negative consequences, so there's a book by his name is Dr. Theodore John Kaczynski. He wrote a book called Industrial Society and Its Future. And he opens the book by saying the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. It may sound like a joke to recommend this book, Industrial Society and Its Future by Dr. Theodore Kaczynski. But it's a great book, and it's very interesting because Ted Kaczynski was almost transgender. And this was back in the 80s. So this guy was way ahead of his time. He had he was a professor. He taught engineering or mathematics.
Yeah.
And so he's probably a little bit autistic.
Yep.
And so he had he had an issue. He sought therapists, and they sent him to one of the first transgender clinics in the world in Colorado. And he went there and he saw the transgenders around him, and it filled him with a genuine disgust and anger. And he left the clinic and he became the Unabomber. And his writings talk about how, as a professor in academics, he was exposed to some of the worst in humanity. He had absolute contempt for what we could now call the cathedral, which is the melding of government interest, private interest, and the university educational systems.
Yeah.
Not to get off on a huge tangent, but basically his point was that humans now more than ever are socialized, and he calls them over-socialized, and we are so dependent on making sure that other people approve of what we think that it hampers our mental health and drives us to do crazy things. In his case, he almost went through with transitioning. It's a very, very interesting book. I can't even summarize it.
Wait, does he talk about this? In the book,
yes,
he speaks about the transgender aspect?
Yes. I believe it was Industrial Society and Its Future where he talks about that in brief. Okay. If you read it, you will be shocked because he wrote it like in the 80s, right? So you're reading this and you're thinking, how is this so applicable to today? And it's just because it's the same game plan. It's just a little bit further down the road.
Yeah.
So in his opinion, which I share, the nature of the internet has fundamentally changed what things we as people value. We don't value independence anymore. We don't value self-sufficiency anymore. We instead value attention on TikTok and stuff. Approval. And it's group approval. And what's the group approval when the platforms are 3 platforms owned by the same companies? and they all operate under the same playbook, you can change what group approval is. And group approval is transitioning, which is why when you go on TikTok, you see, young girls showing off their mastectomy scars and retweeting each other and liking each other, because that's what's hip and trendy. That's what was made cool.
Yeah. So how have you navigated that hyper-socialization? Because it's not all just one side. It's not all just Coomers and then Tumblrinas. There's also the Channies, the 4chan stuff. There's the counterculture, the edgy stuff. There's ways of resisting hyper-socialization, I guess, by hacking it into being like the out group.
Yeah, right? Well, I mean, let me put it this way. There was a brief period of time, a couple weeks, I think 1 or 2 weeks, where my forum was down completely, because what had happened is I had thought ISPs, these tier 1 ISPs, would not censor ever. So I plugged my back-end computer into a tier 1 ISP that had DDoS filtering that I was paying $2,000 a month for, and I plugged into the internet, and that was how I accessed that server, was through that ISP. I didn't have a backdoor to the server. So when Blake Willis of Zayo Paris, at the request of Liz Fong Jones, instructed or suggested to his company that they terminate service to us, and they did overnight on a Sunday, on a weekend, without talking to me at all, I no longer had access to my computers. So I had to wait a week to restore access, get a backup line going in, eventually move it. And during that time, I did not have the Kiwifarms for the first time in 10 years. And I ventured back out, blinking into the sun of the internet. And I went to Twitter, and I went to 4chan, and I went to all these other social media sites. And I was disgusted. I was filled with contempt and anger and vitriol at how juvenile and stupid everything is. I've managed to avoid group approval by accidentally insulating myself from the platforms most people use. I never realized it until I couldn't use my own site. And I realized I would never, ever, if I lost the Kiwifarms, I would just have to unplug everything and become a farmer and never go online again, because I hate it.
Huh. But you're still online. It's just your own online.
When I'm online, I am almost always programming or using the forum, or I'll play a video game or something occasionally. I'll play a very simple game that's like offline or is old school. Like I've been recently, when I have 30 minutes and I want to just unwind and not think, I'll go play deathmatch in CSGO. To give you an idea of how exciting that is, you spawn, you have a gun in your hand, you walk until you see someone, you shoot them, and then you get shot in the back of the head and you respawn. That's it. It's not a complicated game. There's no socialization. Sometimes a Russian kid yells at you if you're lucky. And Victoria 3 is just offline. It's just building stuff. And but the most, I use Twitter now because Elon Musk, peace be upon him, has allowed me to have a Twitter account for the first time in years, like literally over half a decade. So now I get to zeet. I'm zeeting at people. I'm aggressively zeeting. I'm waiting to be banned again for my zeets, but even then I'm still in my bubble. I still got mostly my people.
What do you, if you feel comfortable venturing into prognostication or looking into the future, where do you think the internet is headed?
Total collapse. So I make a distinction between two kinds of things. I recently, and I consider this something that is insidious beyond what is recognized on its face. The AP style guideline changed the spelling of the internet. You'll notice that on a lot of websites now, the internet is a lowercase word. Yeah. And if you were educated at the same time I was, you would know that the internet is a proper case noun, because it is one thing. It's the network of, it's not just a network of networks, which is an internet. Anytime two networks connect, that makes an internet. The internet is one thing that spans the globe. It reaches the space. It goes to Antarctica. It's spread across the undersea, in the Atlantic Ocean. It's everywhere. It's in the air, literally. Yeah. That is the internet, and it's a proper noun. It's one thing, but they have changed it so that now it's a lowercase noun, so that is a distinction. That distinction doesn't exist. What I see is that you're going to see a breakdown of the internet into smaller internets, which you already see in China. China and North Korea enjoy an internet together that nobody else can access. Russia has experimented cutting off the internet to create the Russian internet. And then you'll probably see an African, because Afra, they have their own union. So you might see an African Union internet. You might see a American internet, and then you might see an EU internet where they can tightly regulate what's online together. And then the only communications between these internets will be on the vestigial remains of the internet, and it will be, like in China, regulated. You'll have to have a business license. You'll have to be able to submit to searches, and it will just be connections from business to business. It will not be John Doe and Ivanov talking to each other in CSGO anymore.
Yeah. And it sounds like, are you ambivalent about that?
No, I hate it. Because like I said, in the 90s, we had achieved a level of human peace that was never seen in human history because we could talk to each other. We could talk to each other.
Yeah.
And we could relate to each other and share culture and stuff. And now it's like, it's completely breaking down. And it was also a time where, and like I said, Zuckerberg and Tom from MySpace, they were just guys that set up a website, and they literally changed the world with it. And that will be taken from people. The way that the internet is now, you can't just become some guy and set up whatever you want on the internet. They're taking that away from people, so that the only way you can set a foot down is if you have angel investments ready to go.
Yeah. So it feels like your project is kind of, it has a not a political valence, but you're kind of standing up for something, right? And you keep on getting kicked around, you keep on moving around, you're trying to hold on or preserve something that is rapidly going out of fashion or rapidly becoming just inconvenient to power.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah, I mean, it is just like, my website is legal. You know what it would take for me to probably close down the site is if I just got like a letter from some spooky agency delivered by Men in Black and said, we are going to fucking ruin you and everything that you know and love unless you shut this down. I'll probably shut it down then. But the thing is that it's legal. People complain about all sorts of shit on the site, harassment, doxing, so on and so forth. Get a court order. If it's actually legal, go to the police, say this is online. It's posted by this guy. It's not posted by the site owner, but it's on this website. I would like to take it down. And then if you can get a court order, I will take it down. I won't even make a big stink about it and say like, oh, this got taken down. Like if it is a genuine infringement of law, I have no issue taking it down. What infuriates me is that these fucking companies, these privately owned companies controlled by a board, think that they get to decide what people can and can't say. And this is intentional because in the same way that the banks exist as a private entity to allow action that would not be permitted by the Constitution, the centralizing and top-down control of the internet is the exact same thing. Like, because then you say, oh, it's just a private company. It's just Cogent. It's just one of the most powerful ISPs to ever exist in human history. It's like, it's only a multi-billion-dollar company owned by a man out of Washington, D.C., They get to do whatever they want. And that's deliberate because it allows them to take things down. And most people are not me. Most people are not going to be like, I'm doing nothing wrong. I don't care if you go after family. I don't care if you go after me. I don't care if I get debanked. I don't care if I can not work a regular job. I don't care if I have to sell cryptocurrency to a man in a commie block every week to get cash to buy groceries. I don't care. Like that is... Yeah, it's like I'm willing to do whatever it takes to defend my rights. Yeah. And most people aren't. Most people will hit that first hurdle and be like, this is not worth it. And they'll go away. And that's what they want. They don't want someone screaming total retard war at the top of their lungs and spamming Twitter with how to file abuse reports to Cogent. They don't want that.
What is the total retard war?
So, Cogent one of the largest ISPs in the entire world, owns probably millions of miles of fiber optic at this point. They own a lot of the internet, the essential backbone to how we communicate. Because when you connect to the internet, many people will wrongly assume that they connect to, I don't know, their local county ISP, and then they're on the internet. They just plug their the ISP just plugs them into the internet, and then they're on the internet. That's not how it works. Your ISPs have an ISP, and what usually happens is that you end up connected, except in extreme situations, like maybe your local ISP, you're sending an email to a local server that's in a different county. Your ISP might have a direct connection to that ISP, and then it hits your server. Not usually what happens. Usually what happens is that it goes to a tier 1 ISP, and it transits around the world, around the country, whatever, and then it lands to the destination ISP. Mm-hmm. Cogent, one of the most powerful tier 1 ISPs in the entire world, has decided that I personally can go fuck myself. Oh. And I strongly suspect that Dave Schaefer, CEO of Cogent, personally hates me. And the reason why I believe this is because Cogent behaves in a way that I've never seen and nobody has ever heard of before. What they are doing is they are tracking my website, and they're looking to the records that I post for IP addresses. So without getting technical, I have to put out IPs that you connect to access the website. Mm-hmm. Cogent is what connects two IPs together. They see that my records change, that those new IPs are there. They will go through and they will do what's called a null routing to that IP. Even if it's not my IP, like my company, I have IPs. If I'm renting an IP, they still block it. They block it very quickly. That's unusual. Usually an ISP is not blocking an IP for abuse, even if it's child pornography, even if it's a DDoS attack, even if it's really awful, wretched shit. It will take them weeks to respond to genuine concerns, because otherwise DDoS attacks wouldn't exist. If DDoS attacks could be were being fought by ISPs, they would not exist. So those serious technical issues and legal issues get handled with due time. Yeah. When I change my records, Cogent blocks them immediately within hours, every time. Doesn't matter who I'm with, they get blocked. And usually what happens is I'll switch to a new provider, and then Cogent sends in the alert to my provider and says, take them down now. And if they don't, it gets blocked. That's what happened with Sykes. Sykes is one of the largest DDoS providers in the U.S. Cogent told them, knock the shit off, get rid of these guys now. And even though I wasn't directly with Sykes, they told my provider that offered DDoS protection. Cogent says you gotta tell this guy to fuck off. Never happened before in human history. This has never, ever been the case where an ISP will chase down a U.S. legal website and tell every provider at every rung, you have to remove this guy. And then also, let's say that they don't. Let's say that they say, yeah, you know what, we looked at it and it's fine. Well, now it's null routed. So one of the providers I have right now has several tier 1 ISPs. So they have Cogent, and they also have a bunch of other good ones. So if you coincidentally are using an IP from a position that your ISP, for instance, only has Cogent as their tier 1 ISP, which is a thing. A lot of small ISPs only have one upstream, which might be Cogent. You cannot connect to my website. Cogent has told you that you as a customer are not allowed to access this website because Dave Schaefer, CEO of Cogent, stock ticker CCOI, has said you can't do this. They made that decision for you. And it was the case with several other ISPs before. During the height of Drop Kiwifarms, they managed to get CenturyLink to block their customers from accessing the site. And complaints to the FCC undid that. But with Cogent, it's harder because it's not a big ISP like CenturyLink where you can directly complain to them and say, I'm paying for my fucking internet service. Why are you not connecting me to this website? Yeah. Cogent is your ISP's ISP. So you have to complain to your ISP. You have to, number one, have the technical know-how to identify that you cannot connect to the Kiwifarms, which is down half the time anyways, because Cogent is blocking you. Number two, then you have to contact your ISP and then explain to that person that you are 100% sure that it's because Cogent is blocking your connection, which they won't understand because they're a random tech guy and they don't know this stuff. Nobody does. And then you have to get that ISP to tell Cogent to knock it off. That's really hard. That is a hard ask. You have to give someone a crash course on BGP, low-level networking, and then have them be confident enough in what they're saying to crash course some guy on the telephone on it to try and action this. It's a nightmare. It's a literal nightmare. It's an opaque box that people are affected by, but they can't understand, and they have no recourse against. Which I don't know what fancy term for living nightmare you would want to apply to that, but that's what we're in.
Why you? Why Kiwi? Why care? Why does Cogent care?
I don't know. My current, I have never. Here's a fun way to summarize that. I have never received direct communication from Cogent. I have no idea what they're angry about. I have no idea what they want taken down. Sometimes I get passed along a complaint, and one of the things that they were really, really hammering on is that, and to be clear, these people are not complaining. It is a third party complaining on their behalf. Say, these are nude images. This is revenge pornography.
Okay.
So that showed up a lot, even though it was not. It wasn't even with the permission of the people involved. Some of those people were like, "I don't want to be involved in this. Why are you advertising that my nudes are on this page? I don't want that." So it was without their permission in regards to this. But I went ahead and I built a tool to censor all this, and just says on these posts now, this is censored. Didn't affect it. Cogent is still after the site. They still won't communicate what they want taken down. Their emails. I posted this on Zitter, but I'll read you their email. You are being contacted and requesting to remove Kiwifarms.net, Kiwifarms.st, and any other Kiwifarms domains and subdomains off of Cogent Network by tomorrow, December 15th, 5 p.m., due to AUP violations. If you do not remove the offending domains as requested, we will take immediate action to address this. This action can include, but not limited to, applying a null route to the IP address, account suspension, or terminations regarding Trojan abuse. That's it. There's no link. There's no paragraph 5 of the AUP. It's just, fuck you. That's what it is.
What's a null route?
A null route is, so this is so technical, even I get this fucked up. I believe there are several kinds of things. It can be where there's one instance where a provider will refuse to route a request. They will say, we can't find a route to that IP address. But there's another kind of block, which I think is the null route, where it lies. It says, actually, there is no route to this IP address possible. And in that case, even if there are multiple ways to connect from your ISP, it will hear Cogent say, there is no possible route to this. And because it's possibly the shortest route, it'll listen to that only and then say you can't connect, even if you could theoretically connect. So I'm not entirely, I think null routing is the one where they just lie and they intentionally obstruct network traffic.
Okay. So why Kiwifarms? Why is Kiwifarms such hot potato?
There is a former Google employee who is legally named Liz Fong Jones. Liz Fong Jones is now the chief technology officer of a San Francisco startup company called Honeycomb, which does work with a lot of big companies like CCP Games, Behavior Games, Vanguard. It's a big list of companies that have millions of dollars at their disposal. Liz is personally a millionaire because they bought Google stock when they started working at Google and sold it when they left. And that was a lot of money. Liz is a known busybody. Anybody who worked with Liz at Google will tell you that Liz was actively involved in all the internal LGBTQIP plus advocacy groups and was just looking for problems. They were looking for people to complain about, looking for things to complain about, looking for people to ruin and get fired. They were just somebody that you had to stay out of their way. Sure. Liz, during 2022, I want to say, made a tweet announcing that not only were they accused of rape, they had been getting accused of rape for 8 years. I cannot find this original accusation, so I don't know the details of it. But Liz Fong Jones explains that this rape that he was accused of was not a rape, but a mere consent accident. So if you ever hear the term consent accident, this is where it comes from. It is a meme that has spurred on because of Liz Fong Jones. Liz Fong Jones explains that at the time, while working for Google, I believe, Liz was also a hardcore BDSM dominatrix.
Okay.
And moonlighted on the side. So when they took business trips to different countries, they would also hook up with the kink community and take money for sodomizing people, basically, in BDSM. One of their customers had buyer's regret, apparently, and accused him of rape. And the way that Liz tells the story is that this person had PTSD due to dogs. and was so afraid of dogs that any kind of dog, anything, would give them a episode. So Liz owns a Samoyed. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. Those little white dogs.
Yeah.
And after having a rousing, successful outing as a BDSM dominatrix with this person, apparently after they were done and everyone was happy with the service provided, this person noticed that Liz had a little white dog hair on his BDSM dominatrix outfit, and then retroactively revoked consent and said, "You raped me because you had dog hair on you, and you know I hate dogs."
Okay.
That's how Liz tells the story.
Okay.
I'll never know what the original story is because Liz, being someone incredibly powerful, technocratic, with millions of dollars at their disposal, has somehow managed to just get rid of all this accusation.
Okay.
Can't find it anywhere. I have a vague idea of who it might be, but I've not confirmed it.
Okay.
It's just gone. So we'll never know.
But the shadows of that, and just some of the evidence is hosted on Kiwifarms, and so Kiwifarms is a liability to Liz?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically. There's another incident too. They actually started messaging us or being involved with us years before they started actively trying, before they got involved with seriously trying to deplatform us. Liz first introduced themselves in like 2016, 2017, because at the time, users on the forum had taken interest in something called Trans Lifeline. It was a very simple charity organization. They offered supposedly suicide prevention, specifically targeting trans people. So if you had a crisis and you needed someone to talk to, Trans Lifeline would be there to pick up the phone and lend a sympathetic ear. They collected tons of money for this. They got advertised by big celebrities. And we believe that the founders, Greta Casava and Nina Chabot, were nearing money. They were stealing charity funds and enriching themselves with the money. Uh-huh. We had collected some evidence of this, in particular, how they would keep going. They would travel around the country constantly and go out to very expensive restaurants and then post about it, openly gloating about how lavish their lifestyle was.
Yeah.
Liz got involved, tried to take us down, emailed from their lizf@google.com corporate email address to my providers saying, "This is a terrorism website. You have to take this down."
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So somehow the ball did not get rolling with that, but that was very scary for people because you're a small tech company and suddenly Google was emailing you saying, "Hey, why do you host this?" That's scary for a small company. Because your business depends on Google prevalence and stuff. And surprise, if you search Kiwifarms on Google, you'll not find our website. But if you go to Bing and type in Kiwifarms, you will find it. Fun fact. So what happened with that is we endured Liz, mostly ignored him, found out that his life partner was trans snake and would dress up in tight-fitting clothes with no arms and would walk around being held by Liz on a leash. And we'd be like, I'm a snake and a snake woman. I'm a snaky snake woman.
And you're not making this up.
No, that's real. I can get you pictures if you want.
Yeah, the pictures are out there. I just want to let the audience know.
Oh, yeah, the pictures are out there. That's the problem.
Yeah.
No, I'm a serious tech professional. Why are you married to a snake then? So what happened? Here's how that wrapped up. Trans life, we were right. They fired. What happened is that eventually Buck Angel, who's a female to male porn star, who's you can go look it up yourself. It's pretty interesting. Buck Angel heard about this and said, "Hey, wait a second," and which is really funny because the female to males hate the male to or the other way around. The male to females hate the female to male transgenders because they pass better. Yeah. So ironically, Buck Angel comes out and says, "We want accountability." And they got accountability. Nina and Chabot were dismissed for stealing money, and they filed under penalty of perjury with the IRS that under Nina and Chabot, $340,000 were stolen from charity funds and spent outside of the concept of the charity. Yeah. So we were right. And it looks really bad for Liz to, number one, be accused of rape, and number two, to have been actively involved in helping cover up charity fraud. Yeah. And that's why he wants the site taken down. And because he has connections with basically everybody in tech, because he was high up at Google and is now high up in this other Silicon Valley startup company, he is using his power and influence to destroy or try to destroy a small website of a couple thousand people.
Yeah. Is there stuff that's too I mean, I don't even want to ask the question because it's something that I don't necessarily want answered in specific detail. But I mean, if somebody started posting evidence of like major corruption on like a federal level on your site, that would, lead to, maybe somebody getting suicided in the back of the head for hosting that stuff. Is there like lines where you're like, I don't want to have anything to do with, Epsteinish kind of conspiracy theory stuff? Or is anything goes and you just kind of let it go and let the chips
We've
fall?
never had to deal with government stuff because usually with the government, I think real journalists are like very open to that kind of stuff.
Okay.
It's mostly with with issues of culture, pop culture, that we kind of thrive in, because journalists don't want to talk. I was raped by a high up Google CEO person, or he was like a site reliability engineer, I think is what it was. It's like they don't care about that, but corruption, that makes your career. If you break a story about government corruption, you're the next Watergate. Your paper is a national name, so they'll cover that. The one thing that is in an area that I wish I could help out more in is people have a great interest in exposing pedophiles. And because of the nature of those kinds of things, I have to be abundantly careful, and I have to be like, don't seek this out. This is one of the few instances where I'll say like, look, and if there's not like actual LOLCow content attached to a pedophile, like if this person is insane and out there in if they're a public figure and they're a pedophile, I'll blast them all day. But if it's just like some weird group of pedophiles, I'm like, here's the FBI link. Here's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Here's how you file a competent complaint to a responsible agency. That kind of thing I try to stay away from, because it's just not it's not funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so ultimately it is a forum and you are the moderator. So even though you have a wide leash, there's still a topical moderation principle in play.
Yeah. That's the main thing. And this is it's kind of like an Ouroboros of logic, because when I'm trying to yes, there is some moderation, but the moderation exists to keep the threads on topic, because there's something that has been called a heckler's veto, where someone will enter a thread and then disrupt the thread and make the thread inviolable as a place to have a conversation about what it's for. So that kind of disruption, even though it is technically free speech for someone to go in and voice their complaints, if they do it in such a way that it's so disruptive and it actually derails the thread and makes it kind of pointless, then I'll say like, look, you're off topic, basically.
Yeah. Is there technology that would make it impossible to destroy, or are there technological solutions to the problems of you having to just unplug and plug in and unplug and plug in and unplug and plug in? Like
Tor.
Tor? Is that what you're saying?
Tor.
Yeah.
Tor, yes.
But it needs to be widely adopted, right?
Yeah. Tor, unfortunately, because of its use by criminals, has an extremely negative reputation. People see it as like a way to access, it's a gateway to drugs or, illicit pornography and stuff like that. So it has an extremely poor reputation. But when we go down on ClearNet, we're still up on Tor, and we'll still see, about 700 to 1,000 people sometimes willing to open up a special browser, wait 30 seconds to connect to the Tor network, and then wait another 30 seconds to establish a circuit with the Kiwifarms, because they're just not going to give up on the site. As long as I don't give up, they're not going to give up.
Huh. Where do you see Kiwifarms going? Is it just, it is what it is? Does it develop? Has it developed?
Well, unfortunately, because of the downtime, we've seen a stunt in growth, but it was for a while, it was doubling in size every year. And if we had been left to our own devices, it would probably be a pretty large site by now. As soon as the site's stable, we will start to grow again, because even though, things are better with X being more open, there's still a demand to talk about people and have organized discussion that you can't really have on X, where it's just like spewed nonsense everywhere that can be deleted at any time, no archives, that kind of stuff. What I would like to do this year is I am determined to open a charity. And I've already set it on a name. It's going to be called the United States Internet Preservation Society. USIPS is how I would call it. And I'm going to get all the network infrastructure. I'm going to connect to every ISP in the world except Cogent. And I'm going to find a way to provide hosting services that I have trouble with. And depending on how much money I can get people to donate to this, and it will be registered charity, so it will be tax deductible.
Yeah.
I'll start with the cheapest thing, which would be a domain name server. I would like to make a little Cloudflare competitor type thing that has like a bot screening shield and DDoS mitigation. And then maybe eventually get like a domain registrar thing set up. And I would like to make it so that the kind of thing that I go through, nobody ever has to go through again.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other reason why they're really, really, really dead set on taking me down, because they know it's there's that scene in Jurassic Park where they're climbing down a tree and the Jeep is breaking all the branches down. I'm going to break every branch until I find one that doesn't break. And then once I find the branch that doesn't break, I'm going to tell everybody. I'm going to say, this is the domain registrar. This is your domain name servers. This is your host. And this is how you stay up online. And once that happens, I hope people will take advantage of it, and they will make a better internet again that we haven't seen in a long time. And I think that they know that, because I've said as much that I intend to do this.
Yeah.
And they know if I am allowed to do what I'm going to do, if I'm not somehow driven out, completely routed out by then it'll be a much more difficult prospect to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. And by better internet, it's not like it. What do you mean by better internet? Because it's going to be scary. It's the scary internet, right? It's internet of people posting mean things about each other and accumulating data on each other, right? I mean, it's if
that's scary, the internet we have right now is scary. Yeah. It's just that it is select few people. It's DNA registry companies, your ancestry, selling your genetic material to China for machine learning evaluation. Huh. The people complain about doxing, but they don't complain about how your data is for sale and how the companies that are used to dox people are buying your information from whoever sells it. Yeah. They don't have any issue with that, because to fix that, they would have to petition Congress and get Congress to restrict these technocrat companies that they'll never, ever act on. So they go after people talking about it, as opposed to the root societal causes that enable people to find your house with just your first and last name and a date of birth,
Mm-hmm. Are there people on your side?
No.
Like high up?
No.
Do you think? Even
Nobody.
Covertly?
If there are, they're secret.
Secret, yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple people who I would call mid or maybe high mid. But as far as do I have a direct connection to Elon Musk? And I have a special red phone in my house that only connects to Elon Musk, and
Musk
sometimes
phone.
It rings. It's people are afraid of me.
Would you accept that?
Would you Alex Jones?
Yeah, would you accept Elon on your side?
Oh, fuck yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I will accept literally anybody. I don't care. I will, if Kim Jong-un wants to host Kiwifarms and we'll be Kiwifarms at KP for the People's Republic of Korea, oh, fuck yeah, instantly. Well, I mean, the only issue with I say that as a joke, kind of semi-seriously, is that with Russia, I have to be very careful with Syria, Cuba, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, because they're sanctioned by the State Department. But Elon Musk, for sure. If Elon Musk calls me, I can tell him good people in basically every country in the world. This data center is good. This data center is good. This data center is good. This guy in Canada is good. This ISP is good. Avoid this one. I can give him a map of everyone who is freedom loving in one day. I have it all mapped out already.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of like something valuable that you could knock on his door with and say, if he is really for free speech, right?
If you have the site open, just scroll down to forum discussion. And then you'll see it near the top. It's pinned. It's Null's tier list for internet service. And if you look at that, I've detailed a lot of the experiences that I've had, not all of them, because I have to keep some things close to heart, But I am actively trying to actively record who has been fair to us and who has not.
Yeah.
With the aspiration that one day, if I do get contacted by somebody high up who is like, I'm doing this thing, I want to make sure I don't have any issues. Who do I go with? I want to put a data center in Europe. Who do I talk to? That I have not just disparaging people like Cogent, who should be avoided, and Path, who should be avoided at all costs, but also bringing up people who have tried to help, even if they couldn't because of other circumstances.
Why James 4:7?
What?
At the bottom of Kiwifarms, it says James 4:7.
Oh,
The
if you look
quote
that
is,
up, it's a
submit
quote.
yourself then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
I am a big fan of any quotation that's like never give up. Like the Winston Churchill quote says, never give up, never submit to violent force. I love any kind of inspirational message that's like, as long as you don't stop trying, you are capable of winning. It's only when you actually give up that you are completely beaten. Only when you decide that you are. Until that point, you're always able to fight more. There's kind of a quadrant that I draw where there's two axes. One is, do you believe that you're fucked? And if you are actually fucked.
Okay.
And the way that this goes is that if you believe that you're fucked and you're fucked, well, then you're already fucked.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. If you believe that you're not fucked, but you're fucked, then you're fucked. If you believe that you are fucked, but you're not fucked, then you're fucked anyways because you gave up.
Yeah.
So the only logical solution, regardless of what the reality is to be optimistic and to say, I'm going to continue forward no matter what, because that is the only possible way that you could ever win. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Is that nonsense, schizophrenic?
No, it's great. It's hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to be a positive Polly because nobody likes negative Nancy. You're negative Nancy. There's another great quote from the movie Old Boy. It's on the painting of of Jesus in the motel room that he's in, and it goes along the lines of, in English, laugh and the world laughs with you, cry and you cry alone. Nobody wants to be on the losers team. You have to always be optimistic and make light of your situation because that's truly the only kind of person that people want to be around.
Mm-hmm. Do you host? So we got Kiwifarms. We're going to plug that. But do you have like something that you do on your own, like a podcast, a regular kind
I do
of
a
thing?
podcast. My site's actually down right now. It's called Man at the Internet, but it is on Rumble. I try to keep the RSS feed up. Or mati.live, manattheinternet.com. I'm gonna have to. I think that it's down because of the provider getting DDoS attacked. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into that. I have an order of operations that when shit hits the fan, I have to go back and fix this. And then with that up, I fix this, and then I fix this, and I fix this.
It's like you're in your bunker, like in the Alamo, or something, and it's just always like crisis mode.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I always wake up and there's another email and it just says, sorry, we received this complaint saying that you're a terrorist and you kill people. So
yeah, with words. Huh.
Yeah. And so we have to, and then sometimes I get people who are really sympathetic and they say, I'm sorry, but our provider is under Cogent. We don't have a choice. Sometimes they're really snobby about it and so on. But there are people out there who recognize the injustice. Like right now, what I did is I was plugging in random hosts all over the place. I actually mapped out, there's a website called bgp.tools. And I was looking at providers that have DDoS protection that I haven't tried before. And I was literally just trying everyone. And then, of course, it's like plugging in a fuse and that one blows. You pull that out, you plug in another one, that one blows. You pull it out and plug in another one, that one blows. Yeah. And I'm up with two right now. One's in Moldova, the main provider, and the other one's in Romania. And I plugged them in, not expecting to last a couple hours like everything else does. And they've lasted days. And I have to get a stopgap because without saying too much, I have a plan. I have a long-term strategy. And I just have to stick with it for a couple months because then I get to show my hand and it'll be very funny. So I'm literally just trying to get a stopgap. And I tell people this when they're a provider, I say, I need 4 months. Give me 4 months. And I just need time. So everything I'm doing is just I'm buying time and talking to people and trying to network a little bit. Right now I'm doing interviews and stuff because it's like I have to, my ability to scream and be heard is limited. I have to scream in more places.
So if somebody wants to join the total retard army, what are the dues and how do they sign up? Where do they go? Where's the recruiting office?
We're still permitted on Telegram, thankfully. So if you're on Telegram, it's t.me/Kiwifarms. On Twitter, it is xjosh, like X is in the platform name, Josh, Josh. And then you can just go to kiwifarms.net, and that will currently redirect you to whatever domain that we're on right now. Yeah. In general, what we're doing right now, because I sat down and I thought about this for a while, and I realized, it's actually a really beautiful thing what Dave Schaefer is doing for Cogent and for the internet as a whole. Huh. Dave Schaefer is a billionaire with a multi-billion-dollar company, one of the most important ISPs in the entire world, has decided that he personally and his abuse team are willing to moderate the internet and keep bad things off the internet. So if you have the technical know-how to identify if Cogent is hosting a specific website, they have opened the doors to you letting them know that there's an AUP violation out there on the internet. So if you happen to be somebody who knows of content and you can identify that it's under Cogent, not even directly. If it's a customer of a customer, they're happy to action that. You can send an abuse complaint about any website you don't like, and you can help them enforce their AUP. And I've showed examples from Liz Fong Jones and other people who have submitted successful complaints that got action from Cogent as a template of what your complaint could look like to maybe see similar results in your efforts to help them enforce their AUP. And my hope, by the way, here's a fun fact. Cogent is one of the few companies that does this. If they receive a complaint and they feel that they forward it to you, they charge you $20. Regardless. Yeah, if they get a complaint and they actually forward it to you, regardless of if it's an actual violation or if you do anything about it, it's $20 on your bill. So every complaint, any complaint that you can convince Cogent to send to that provider, $20 for an email. Interesting. I don't know. It's just weird to me that their terms of service are like that. So I don't know. If you happen to see any content that you think violates Cogent's AUP, there's links to the AUP, links to how you can submit.
What's an AUP? Just for
acceptable use policy.
Okay.
It's sort of like terms of service, but they call it an AUP in the business.
And that will certainly be applied evenly across the board. They're not going to,
of course, weigh
one thing or another.
It's free to ask. If you got, especially if you have an email that's like a real email from like a company, and you have, I don't know, somebody, you have a business competitor who's under Cogent, and you think that they're doing things that's against their AUP, you can always just shoot your shot. What happens? You miss? Somebody reads your email at Cogent and deletes it? That's too bad. Because Dave Schaefer's made it very, very clear to me through his actions that he wants to help you make a cleaner, safer internet for everybody. I think that's beautiful. Brings a tear to my eye.
Josh Moon, is there anything you do when you're not doing this? What brings you joy?
People complaining about me is pretty funny. I genuinely enjoy what I do. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. Yeah. If it was miserable, I wouldn't do it. I have a lot of fun doing it. Yeah. There's a sadistic pleasure that I see when I open up and I realize that everything's broken all over again. It makes me laugh. But if I have time to kill, I do enjoy programming, like as a hobby, and usually what I program ends up going to the site. But sometimes, if I do find myself in a period of boredom, I will code systems for video games that never get completed. Like I was interested in a while in Unity, and I was developing a sort of like an atmospheric simulator that would exchange. It was like tile based, and it would exchange gas between tiles based on things like heat. And heat capacity and velocity. It was just like a little physics simulator, but it was fascinating because it was multi-threaded, and that kind of multi-threading a game and complex systems in a game is like a novel thing that they're just starting to do because of mobile phones. Mobile phones have very slow processors, but usually many threads. Yeah. So modern mobile games are often multi-threaded, and it's very complicated to make something multi-threaded because of how memory works. So it's an interesting field. I enjoy programming.
Because of the problem-solving aspect of it, the creativity needing like some technical.
I even when I was a kid, I would stay interested in things that Were novel, were things that were complex, that required problems. And the Kiwifarms is truly a blue water, novel, contemporary problem that I can take as many passes at fixing as I want. Because it's not, that's the funniest thing, is that buying a VPS is $20, you know, and I can do it with cryptocurrency. And it's not illegal. I can go to a website and buy a VPS and set it up, and my website's not illegal, and doing that's not illegal, and I can just do that over and over again forever.
Yeah. And if somebody wanted to support you, how do you get support, or what kind of support is good?
It's just cryptocurrency, basically. If you want to support the forum, actually, just recently, I was able to set up, because one of the things that got taken down last year was my LLC. They sent in a complaint that I was associated with Russia, and my registered agent resigned because of an executive order saying that registered agents can't help Russians incorporate. Total bullshit, but I managed to reincorporate. Yeah, I managed to reincorporate in West Virginia, and because of very specific, interesting laws in West Virginia only, I can designate the Secretary of State for West Virginia as my registered agent. So he can't resign. He's stuck. So instead of that, I have a PO box, which because it's a government entity, they can't kick me out of the post office because I'm a U.S. citizen. I have a right. The Secretary of State can't deny me service because I'm a citizen. I have a right. So I just have someone collect money orders and stuff from that PO box once a week, and he uses like a phone check scanner to deposit it. So cryptocurrency, and if you're old fashioned, you can just mail me a check and I'll deposit that.
Weird. You're really kind of like an outlaw. You're living an outlaw.
That's the crazy thing. That's the maddening thing, is that I'm not an outlaw. It feels like it. It feels like I'm trying to sell organs, but I'm not. I'm trying to farm kiwis. I'm literally trying to talk about a retarded man who shits himself. That's all I'm trying to do. And everyone is getting in my way, and it's frustrating. But like I said, it's a lot of fun realizing that I have to figure out what to do with an LLC, and then searching the laws of every state in the country and considering incorporating with a tribe in North Dakota to get access to the only. Here's a fun fact that I found out doing insane research. North Dakota is the only state in the entire country that has a government-ran bank. The Bank of North Dakota is the only government bank in the entire country, including the Federal Reserve. It's the only one. Okay, so I was considering incorporating with the tribes up in North Dakota so I could have access to the Bank of North Dakota, which is a government-ran bank that they can't kick me out of.
And your decision?
My decision was to go to West Virginia because of the Secretary of State issue. The underlying issue with North Dakota was that I would still need a person to be the front of the company. Yeah. And I couldn't find anyone who was willing to, get shot at by trannies. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there like just roaming bands of troons in North Dakota?
Well, I mentioned that they're the Trans Lifeline. The founders that were eventually found to be thieves that stole $340,000, if I remember correctly, of charity money, actually visited my mom's house and then posted pictures of them shooting at the range in Pensacola.
Are you serious? Huh.
Yeah, for sure. They showed up. I was in the bathroom at the time, so they said I hid, but like they literally waited for us to come back from dinner. Yeah. And then showed up at the house. And when I was in the bathroom, they knocked, and my mom closed the door on them. But yeah, they tried to intimidate us physically.
You have some dedicated haters.
Oh, for sure. Because it's on the site. All the shit that they do is on the site, and it makes them it in the same way that they prevent me from having access to certain things. I am a roadblock in their way. Yeah, it's really damaging to your company when business partners can find out that you were accused of rape and help a charity hide the fact they stole money. Yeah. So I am as much as I want to explain my status as someone who's been victimized by this nonsense, they're equally held back because of the totality of their mistakes that are documented on the site. That's their personal investment.
What's your favorite thread? If some normie wanted one thread, the essential Kiwifarms thread, what would you recommend?
Right now, I usually don't have an answer for this, but I do have one right now. He's a guy named Bossman Jack. I love Boss Man Jack. He's in Virginia. He is chronically addicted to gambling, and he goes onto a casino, and he smokes a blunt, and he starts putting his money into these dumb internet slot machines. And every day he loses it. He loses his shit. He punches holes in his wall and yells at his mom and dad. And I mean, he's a really terrible person, like at heart, but he's also incredibly funny. And the things he says are just like when people troll him in his chat, he just goes off on these huge tirades about having sex with their mom for like minutes at a time. He'll go on and on about how he had sex with this random guy's mom. And he's just really, really funny. But he's kind of divisive because, gambling is an addiction. It's a mental health issue. So if you know gamblers, you might not find it so funny because you can see, the underlying causes. But I don't know. He's such a performative person that it's hard to hate him for the bad things he does.
Yeah.
And it's hard to solely, like it's hard to feel bad for him too, because yeah. So yeah, very, very interesting guy, very funny. People take him ranting and remix it into music and stuff. That's my favorite stuff. I love it when the community draws art and makes fan remixes and does crazy stuff that like honor somebody who's like a total weirdo. I did for instance, have you ever seen my coins?
No.
I'll show you this. Here's a prime example of how the internet is an insane place. And my browser is choking. I can do this, I think. Christian silver coin. So this guy fucked his mom. But before he fucked his mom, I asked him permission to do a silver coin run. I took Christian Weston Chandler's visage, and I paid a man in Indonesia, actually first on the forum, to take this and make it into a vector graphic. Then I paid a man in Indonesia to carve his visage and our great seal, the Kiwifarms, into a brass die. And then I spent $70,000 on silver. And I had them strike thousands of these coins, and I sold them to people. I sold pictures of a man who fucked his mother before that happened, to be clear. And now I have 20 of them myself, but there are thousands of these silver coins with the Kiwifarms on one side and Christian on the other side.
Wow,
and that's an example of true art and true
legal
insanity.
tender almost. If you had some sort of
it's
fiat.
It's 4 nines pure silver. That's better than, I'm going to say that is a what they call a mirror finish. You can see yourself in the coin. That requires 4 nines. 3 nines will not reflect like that. So this is a collector quality pure silver, as good as it gets. For those silver aficionados. People are asking me to make another one. I don't know who I would put on the other ones.
Kiwifarms. Kiwi. What's a kiwi? I should have put that at the beginning. I should ask you.
What's a kiwi?
Yeah, what do you mean kiwi? Yeah, it's a bird, but what is the significance, the spiritual?
Do you not know? Do you really not know this? The origin of the name?
Yeah, I really don't know it.
So I mentioned that when we were about Kristen Weston Chandler, who was on the Quickie. Quickie is how you pronounce CWCKI. Okay. A lot of people, when they see that CWCKI, don't know how to pronounce that word. So they would stumble and they would try to find some way to pronounce it. And one of my favorites was a particularly much-mouthed person who would call us the Kiwifarms, trying to pronounce it. And since we were branching away from Chris anyways, I thought, what a wonderful name for a new site. So we rebranded formally based off this person's inability to pronounce our name.
Quickie.
To the Kiwifarms.
Kiwifarms. Farming Kiwis. Josh, you're doing a tremendous service to humanity, and at the heart of the work that you do is it's an anthropological, human interest archive of just the weirdness in the hearts of man. It's entertainment, it's spicy stuff, it's hot potato, might even be toxic to some people. I mean, certainly it's problematic in your life, but it's got like this beating core of interest in just the complexity of the human condition.
Yeah, I agree. I think that as much as people want to snub their nose at people like Jerry Springer and Maury Povich and Dr. Phil and those types of people who like to parade human misery around, everyone knows it. everyone to an degree is at heart, it's a vice. They love to shit talk. They love to talk about people in their family.
Yeah.
They love drama because that's a part of being alive. Is talking about other people and what they're up to. And my position has always been this, that with the internet, people can make a lot of money being just a celebrity, just doing YouTube videos and stuff. Yeah. And when you do that, you open yourself up. The reason why that kind of money is there is because there's a downside to that. And that's when you collect money from a ton of people who watch your stuff, you open yourself up to the public and the criticisms of the public and the meanness and nastiness of the public sometimes. And that's just the natural downside of it. And you can't make millions of dollars off of YouTube videos and then complain that people say mean things about you, because that's why that's part of the job. Is entering public description. And it used to be that the people who were celebrities were like movie stars and stuff, and they got paid a lot of money for what they did. But now, everyone wants to be famous. So we have very, very minor celebrities that only make a couple $1,000s, and then they're a handful of haters, and it's like a microcosm of that paparazzi stuff that used to exist and probably still does.
Yeah. Do you take kindly to being a public figure insofar as you are?
Well, I'm not. It's very weird. I'm a public figure, maybe. For legal reasons, I deny being a public figure. However, if I were a public figure, if we were to assume, for the sake of argument, that I was, I'm a public figure nobody can talk about. It's very strange, because if you talk about me, you either have to say it like Hitler. Well, Hitler did make the Autobahn. I want to make it clear, Hitler, terrible guy, terrible things, but he did make the Autobahn. It's like, Joshua Moon, let me say this. Kiwifarms, worst place on the internet, should be taken down. Let's be clear. But Josh did say this and was pretty convincing. It's like you have to apologize for mentioning me in polite company, which is interesting, because I am just some fucking guy.
Yeah. With a website. Last guy with a website. Internet
Basically.
outlaw. Josh Moon.
Something like that. I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic moving forward. I'm hoping, because I think a lot of people, because I don't do many things where I talk to people. I think doing my podcast was one of the best things I ever did, because when I write, and I'm aware of this now, I sound like the biggest asshole to ever exist. There's something about my writing style that is so caustic, so unfiltered and mean-spirited, that people just assume I am the worst person to ever live. And then you hear me talk about stuff, and you realize that I am I sound weird. I sound very inoffensive. People say that I'm well-spoken, and I'm not. Sometimes I can even be careful about what I say to people. So it's almost hard. There was a conspiracy theory for a while that I was two different people. There was the podcast me, and then there was the for me, because it is such a thing. So I'm hoping that in talking to more people, this fear that I believe may exist, that I'm just some kind of like feral, unsocialized human dog hybrid that can't be trusted, will abate a little bit. And there will be a sense that if I tell this guy that I know something about Cogent or some other person involved, and I have like a tip, they will not be afraid that I will immediately like turn on them. You know what I mean? And like post emails and stuff. So I think there's a fear with that, where you can't tell me, like these companies. I'm always so grateful when companies tell me what's happening, because I never know what's going on. And then one of them takes a risk and says, it's this data center and they're being compelled by Cogent. I'm like, oh, thank God, I know what the fuck is happening for once, And I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I'm grateful to be part of your public relations tour.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Hopefully, I
appreciate you taking the risk, because I know some people have been asking you, and it's always, I guess, a little bit spooky. Did you feel spooked? Did you feel like I would be a monster, an insane person?
No, I'm not spooked at all. No, I've heard your voice. I can gauge somebody's character in a couple minutes of listening to their voice, and we'll see if Cogent comes after my YouTube channel.
Hey, the more the merrier. The more people that Cogent causes problems for, the fewer companies I want to work with them, and then finally we can get rid of them, and then I'll be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for giving me your time, giving me your evening, and it's been great to speak with you. Let me know how I'll put links in the description of all the ways people can follow your work and get connected with you. And is there anything else that you wanted to plug?
Oh no, I think that was a pretty comprehensive conversation about
Boss
everything.
Man Jack.
Bossman Jack, if you love Gamba Sesh and you wanna risk it for the biscuit, my boy Bossman Jack needs a sponsorship with steak ASAP.
All these characters all in the recording. Doop.